Gavin, St Patrick's Cathedral is one of Dublin's top tourist attractions. How has 2018 been and what are your hopes for the year ahead?
2018 has been very good. Everything is relative. So last year was the best year we ever had. This year we're about 2 to 3% up.
Excellent.
We were down one of our key months, July, came back strongly in August and with very strong growth then in September. So going quite well.
So annualised visitor numbers would be about?
Well, including people who come to some of our events and so forth, it would be about 620,000.
That's remarkable.
For 2018 would be the hope. And of those, possibly 570 or so would be paying visitors through the main door. Yeah.
So you must be top 5 in terms of visitor numbers of Dublin.
Yeah, in terms of paying visitor attractions or attractions that charge in, we would be in the top 3 or 4. Yeah.
And obviously it's steeped in history and heritage and so on. The name alone, though, St Patrick's Cathedral, must appeal to a very wide international audience. Does that help?
Well, I think it's essential. Yeah, a bit of early branding there is well thought through. North Americans are particularly attracted to the cathedral. We do very well there. 40 to 45% of our visitors will be from the United States. And I think they respond very well to obviously the culture and the heritage associated with the cathedral.
Yeah.
The cathedral itself has been here since the 1220s, so it has a very long footprint in terms of its time and history and culture, and I think people enjoy that.
Great. And 2019, do you have plans or projections that you could share?
Well, we're usually modest about our projections because we've had uninterrupted growth now year on year since 2010. No graph ever goes up forever. So at some stage there'll be a levelling off. We do have some capacity constraints as well at the height of the season, which are issues for us. I normally take a 3-year rolling average and use that as my projections for the budgets. My feeling is that things are going quite well. We're very unexposed to the UK market, and that only 2 to 3% of our visitors actually come from the United Kingdom, so that isn't a huge issue for us.
Why is that? Because I would have thought the United Kingdom and St Patrick's Cathedral, there'd be a kind of an appreciation for how wonderful a visitor experience and even a place of worship this is.
Well, I don't know. It's a very good question, and we're endeavouring to find out, because even if it's a declining market, it's still the biggest market and there's an opportunity for us there. So we're very keen to find out the answer to that very question.
Yeah.
I know that other similar built heritage attractions do well with the United Kingdom, but then perhaps less so in some of the other sectors and segments that we do well in. So it's a puzzle, but we are investing time this year actually in looking at the people and researching the people that come and the people that don't come to the cathedral, and using that as a basis for our strategy more and more.
And the plus, I suppose, of not being overly exposed to the British market is that Brexit, hopefully, even a bad Brexit, hopefully won't impact you too much, because you have such a strong North American business. I mean, 45%, that's something remarkable.
Well, it is, but Brexit is a problem for us all. I mean, as on the macro level, in terms of the island and how we do. You know, when I go back a few years ago, the United Kingdom was an expensive place to visit. 2017, I think about 40 million people or thereabouts visited the United Kingdom. They spent, I think, £25 billion there. And that is a huge market for us. It's also a big threat to us now. It's about 20% cheaper to visit than it was. They're investing very heavily, and from almost the month after the vote to leave the European Union, they realised that a driver for their economy more and more would be this question of tourism and inbound tourism. So I think we have to watch ourselves there. They have fantastic product, if you want to use that term.
They do.
They have endless amounts of it, and they're a direct competitor to us.
So, in other words, an American market or a European market may choose Britain for a visit as opposed to Ireland.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a real potential threat to us. They also, in some ways, in some areas, are more cognizant of what their tourism drivers are than us. So if I take that to the Irish context, there are 3 really important things that bring inbound tourism here. People is one, people and culture. The next is our environment, and the next then would be our built heritage. And those 3 things are what drive in large numbers of visitors in.
And how well do you think we look after those 3 things?
I think what's good for the citizen, what's good for the citizen is good for the tourist. And
Yeah.
I think that we neglect them. I think we take too much for granted. I mean, there was a report in the Irish Times, I think it was last week, 40% of our towns are pumping raw sewage into the watercourses
Yes.
beside them. Some of those towns are actually really well-known tourism destinations. And I think that's atrocious. And I think that those who speak on behalf of tourism, Irish tourism, should have something to say about that. I think that I work for obviously a cathedral built heritage. I think that no substantial built heritage property ever pays for its capital costs out of its visitor receipts. And yet, unlike the United Kingdom, where such things are valued very strongly, there's no scale, no grant of scale to go for, like the Heritage Lottery Fund, for instance, which leaves us at a distinct disadvantage.
Yeah.
So, and even the arts and other things like that, which speak to the people and the culture, those things, I think, I won't say they're neglected, but they're certainly not invested in enough. And I think that will tell in the long run.
Yeah, and taken for granted to a certain extent.
Yeah, it will tell, and I think that we will lose competitiveness. And it's not just the United Kingdom. I mean, somebody from a large city in Europe or America, it's as easy for them to go to Brittany, the Western Highlands, Bavaria, Salzburg, Austria, any of these places, and it's quick and easy and cheap to get to them, as well as the west coast of Ireland. So I think we've got to be aware that it's a competitive world, and we need to carve out our niche.
How best do you think we as tourism practitioners or tourism professionals can convince the government or the establishment, if you like, of the importance of looking after built heritage, the environment, the welcoming nature of Irish people? Is there a trick we're missing?
Well, I welcome very much the establishment of AVIA, and I think that's a voice for the sector. I think the hotels... That's
the Association of Visitor Experiences and Attractions.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the hotels have had very good lobbying and for some time organisation, but I think it's good that the sector has that. We need to broaden out the focus and think a little bit more long term. I think Fáilte Ireland do a fantastic job within their remit, but we also, as a sector, should be lobbying the Department of Heritage and others, again, encouraging people to see the bigger picture.
Yes.
It doesn't take long for a destination to get a poor name.
Yes.
I was talking with a lady who's a guide, I think, and one of the people who organised the new Newbridge silverware factory tours, and she was telling me that so many visitors want to know where the waste goes, the effluent goes, where does the spare bits of leather and metal, what happened to the recycled? These are questions people have. And I think we've got to be very aware of that's a real driver for tourism now. And as I said before, if it's good for the tourist, it should be good for the citizen as well.
Absolutely.
So I think we've got to have our eyes wide open to opportunities all the time to press this at government. So whether it's poor, unthought through development in the west of Ireland, again, diminishing the quality of people's lives there and diminishing the quality of the product for the tourist industry as well. We've got to think about those things. The city likewise. I mean, I was disappointed personally with the plans for the plaza in College Green that they didn't pass. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but those things are very important in keeping the city alive and thriving for the people who live there and for the tourists.
Yeah, having it a living civic place that the domestic market and international tourists can enjoy.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Great. And you've talked quite a bit about product and the quality or otherwise of the Irish tourism experience. In terms of how we promote Ireland and Dublin indeed, because obviously the cathedral is here in the heart of Dublin, how well do you think we do that? Could we do it better? Could we dial up certain things? Do we overpromise certain things?
Well, I think Ireland actually, I think there's been a sea change in my time in industry and how it's presented. So in the old days, you'd see a couple on horseback thundering along a beach and they'd pass, sort of an old codger leaning out over a half door, sort of gazing at them. It's changed now, and it's fresher, it's more contemporary, and I think that it's a very positive thing. I think Dublin particularly has a lot going for it, apart from being a really interesting place and quite a small place and very easy to get to. It has two huge advantages. It has the Wicklow Mountains around it, it has Meath and places like that, and it also has the sea. And I know from my own personal experience, these are very underutilised. And I think that the repositioning of Dublin as a modern metropolis, really, with a lot to offer, but comfortable with its rural hinterland and with easy accessibility to it, I think, is a really positive thing for Dublin. And I noticed that over the last few years, that's the way it's being presented more and more. And I think there's a lot to go there, and I think that's a very unique thing for Dublin, and I think that will play well.
Yeah, and yet it's also a city of history and heritage and culture. How well do we promote that aspect of the city?
I think that, again, speaking of the promotion of the culture and heritage of Dublin, I think it's taken for granted. I think that there's not very widespread, but a certain lack of affinity with it. We have, like so many European countries and countries across the world, a tumultuous past, a troubled past. But I think that our heritage, our great houses, our great cathedrals, our ecclesiastical heritage, I think that it needs to be foremost. It needs to be the thing that people focus on in terms of the policy, because nobody comes to Ireland to stay in a particular hotel.
Yes.
They come to explore what the country has to offer. And if you let that become degraded, I think you've got an issue. Yeah. We had, a decade ago, we had unparalleled rapid development all over the country. Some of it very good, a lot of it not good. And I'm afraid that has left a stamp across the country and also in the capital. I think what's happening now is more thoughtful. I think it's better quality. But I think that the older buildings, the buildings that lend character to a city, some of them are in state hands, and that's fine. But a lot of them that are not in public hands, like St. Patrick's Cathedral, Rusper House, they are really struggling to maintain themselves.
And of course, the cost of funding the likes of the cathedral is enormous.
Well, it is. I mean, it's quite jaw-dropping. I mean, these buildings just keep trying to fall down all the time. and so I would estimate over the last 10 years, we've easily spent €7.5 to €8 million conserving St. Patrick's Cathedral and the deanery to the highest of international standards, actually. We have received some help, but certainly, it would be about a tenth of that in terms of state aid. And again, now as I speak to you, there is no real grand scheme of scale that can help with capital costs. And yet, it's a national monument, it's a listed structure, it's extremely important ecclesiastical and medieval site, and we are charged with its upkeep and maintenance. And I think that we do deserve support for that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And of course, it's steeped in history from, Cromwell visiting to Dean Jonathan Swift and a variety of other, if you like, iconic experiences in Irish history. What are the plans for the year or two ahead? You mentioned capacity constraints, which any building, due to its finite size, has. So I imagine they hit home in July and August, which must be a logistical, an operational headache. But even looking ahead 3, 4, 5 years, are there plans for adding to the experience or rejuvenating the experience in any way?
There are indeed. Speaking to the first of your points, capacity constraints, this occurred a few years ago, and we opened up a new entrance into the cathedral, well, an existing entrance, but made it useful for visitors at the north side, and that was tremendously helpful. So separating out the groups of the individuals at the height of the summer. Medieval buildings, they didn't think a lot about bathroom facilities, so we've had to tack on some temporary ones, which are now there about 4 years actually at the west end of the cathedral. And we also put a lobby in the Great West Door to allow easier access in and out of the building. So that's been enormously helpful. We revitalised our exhibition panels. We've a lot of free guided tours during the day. We hope to bring in an integrated audio guide as well in different languages to help the visitors engage and understand the cathedral story. Not everybody can go on a guided tour, especially in a building like this, but we want people to be able to explore it on their own terms.
Yes.
So those things we're doing. However, we have a larger, more existential threat really, in that we have to replace the roof. So that's our big challenge. Every church seems to have a problem with its roof. Our roof, very kindly, was replaced by Sir Benjamin Lee Guinness in the 1860s, but that's a long time ago now, and we have to, all the upper roofs have to have a new slates, new leadwork, new substantial repairs to masonry and all the rest of it. So we're looking into that beginning in the new year actually. So that will be a very large challenge for us. It's about €8.5 million actually, including fees and VAT. Now we don't have it, but we've got to do it.
Yes, it's not petty cash by any means.
No, indeed, no. And bear in mind, of course, that the cathedral is a charity, and we're not in the business actually of generating surpluses and making money. Everything we make goes back into the charity, whether it's the choral worship, the education programs, the community and outreach programs. So those things must continue too.
Yeah, because of course at heart you're a place of worship. How do you manage, if you like, that slight clash from being a visitor attraction and being yet a vital place of worship for parishioners?
Well, it'd be disingenuous of me to say there weren't challenges, but I think attitude goes a long way towards solving that problem. So we, as the National Cathedral for the Church of Ireland, we firmly believe that we have a ministry of welcome towards all people. So our visitors are welcome guests, and not only do they want to visit the cathedral, they're also willing to pay towards its maintenance.
Yes.
So we're absolutely thrilled with that. So we do our very best for them. And unlike many other attractions that you can visit, of course, the very best of what the cathedral has to offer is actually free for all. Yes. So on an annual basis, we get about 40,000 people attending our services. The majority of those are visitors who've come from all over the world
Yes.
for the services. We have approximately 75 to 80,000 people a year looking at our services online, because you must remember we have a very unique form of choral worship here with a professional choir. We have choristers going to the choir school, which was established in the 1430s. Yes. Choristers from that school still singing the daily services here, boys and now girls. So it has a very extraordinary form of choral worship that people thoroughly enjoy from all over the globe. So I think, again, just to go back to it, it's how one perceives visitors, and if you perceive them to be, as we all should in our tourism industry, as honoured guests, I think it goes a long way towards solving any potential clashes.
Great. Gavin, thank you so much. Congratulations to you and the team on such a wonderful, iconic piece of built heritage for Dublin and Ireland. We wish you very well in the future, and thank you for your time.
Well, thanks indeed.